Elmer and Blockman.
I know.
That's where we lived for a long time. Well, they lived on down here, some of those buildings down there.
They never did join the church, did they?
Never did. None of their children ever did. But the water, the first water came right here that was piped here. And there was a place up on the east hills that they piped the water down. Now they've improved it and it goes to every town or every home here. We called it the Hillside Spring. I'm with a sleigh, and I still remember that. I went, my dad would be in the front sleigh and I'd be in the back sleigh, and I couldn't have been over 8 or 9. It was 10 miles down
to Lambeau.
10 miles back.
Yeah, I've been on those trips with my father.
And do you remember the Roskilly?
Yes, I do.
Well, now that's the place up there. It's all alone up there. And that was also known as his...
Uncle Will's daughter. The eldest daughter, isn't she?
She was... Rennis was the oldest.
Oh, yeah.
Rennis and
Lee.
Lee.
Yeah, they were another wife.
That's right. And then Mary was the oldest.
That's right. I thought he drowned.
No, he got now this is the reservoir here.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember that reservoir.
Well, where's the water that runs into the reservoir?
Well, you've got to get on that up there.
Where was your home?
Well, I'll show you when we get up there a little further. It stood there for a long time and then someone burned it down.
Oh, yeah.
They used to take them with the horses on the sleigh, whole sleigh up on that hill. We'd all get in the sleigh and they put the tongue back this way and we'd slide down.
You done that too, huh?
Oh, I remember that so well.
Well, that was a thrill now.
Oh, yes, sir.
Even the lagoon, they didn't have anything that was any meaner than that. I've done that too. In fact, I was real small when I had went up there with Woodrow. Woodrow was bringing the team down, and then they'd drive up, and then he'd bring the team down. I remember Lee said, "Oh, now you can see the dam."
Because your fronts are almost ready.
Yeah, it'll last. They had quite a dam rebuilding 20 years ago, and they raised the dam.
Now, this embankment right along the road here, is that higher than it needs to be? Or?
No, it gets up there pretty close to the top. Yeah, it does. But this was all our ground here, and this is our ground here. We'd run the horses and the cattle on the hill, drive them down to the creek for a drink. That was my job, was to wrangle the horses.
Now, is that your old windmill?
That's the old windmill. Uncle Hans had given me a mule. It was out of a Shetland mirror, and it wasn't very big. And I rode it. Now this was our house, or where we lived here, just before. And that was the windmill, and they got the water too full in that cistern one time, and the water and it froze and caved the front end in. There's none of the Gunnels, and you remember the Fonsbeck family.
Yes, I remember.
There's only one of them left here.
Well, the farms had to get bigger to accommodate the cost of machinery.
They had to.
Didn't there used to be, didn't this road follow on top of the embankment of the reservoir?
Well, there was a road that led across the reservoir, right on top of the embankment. And then they had what they called a splash board on top of it.
What's the crop over here that we just passed with the yellow?
Oh, that's safflower.
Over oil.
Now this is the creek right here. Now that's the size of the spring right there. It's warm water. You go out there and it's just about body temperature.
I was baptized here in Blue Creek on the way to church one morning.
Well, Dad put me on a horse.
The Publir?
Or no, the Levitts lived on this side. They lived right up here.
Now, Horace Dales, I remember.
Horsetails, huh?
Dales and Gene, you can right there's the head spring right there.
That's
Blue Creek.
Baptized in the winter.
Yeah.
It is
His
blue.
name was Scott.
This is a
I don't remember him.
safflower.
I remember Abe.
Safflower.
He was the one that
Oh,
backed
there
up
was a
against.
girl, Lois.
120 acres in that general area, huh?
Uh-huh.
Point at it. Over there, huh? That hill is the, you were just under that hill, your home was just under that hill we're looking at,
It
huh?
was more to where this one is, and then there was that outcropping of rocks right close where we used to go picnic.
And that's where you were born?
Uh-huh. I was born up there.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't heard about that before.
Yeah, they usually quite a bit. They cost about $600.
Our eldest daughter's husband and his father have raised sheep for generations.
Here,
At first it was
near the home where
on with
Chris
a
was born.
enclosure.
This ranch here belongs to Miller, the same Miller family. This is where they had a half a section of land.
But now that's
70 years ago,
It broke up.
Gus's father stayed out here, and
Yeah, they don't
heavy winter, this is where Mom was born, out there in these tules in a little log cabin.
This is the Blue Creek.
I can go right down.
They're going down to the spring to see the headwaters of Blue Creek.
Right there.
Zelda and Clarence here. What are you saying?
Come and see how the water comes up out of the ground right there.
Okay,
Take a picture of that.
okay. This is a fairly large spring, and it flows the year round, almost without change in volume.
But there are several spots out in the middle there where spring water comes up out of the bottom. The kids like to come up here and go down. It gets deeper down further there,
Oh,
and it's deep enough where there's a few spots that it's just about over your head.
well. Well, that's a nice flow of water, isn't it?
Yeah,
This is where part of where it originates, comes out of the ground, bubbles up. These small minnows inhabit the spring area. Well,
That's the spillway for the floodwaters, is that right?
I guess so, yeah. Looks like somebody's camped up here.
they're picking cattails out here, or something. Will's son, Verlin's cousin, Verlin's father's cousin. He's our tour guide here.
I'm the tour guide.
We appreciate that too.
I'll say we do.
It's
Yeah.
a pleasure.
We get a
It's a pleasure.
little first-hand knowledge here that we've sort of heard in rumors here and there for the last 40 years.
Well, I'm just confirming all the lies that Verlin told me.
Well, Verlin's not the one, Tress the one that told me about it, but it was sort of fragmentary. But this kind of pinned some of it down. I appreciate that.
Now, where do you live now?
We live in Washington State.
Oh, so you're just down for the
We're just
reunion.
down for the reunion.
Well, how neat. Close to Seattle area?
No, we're on the east side. You're farmers then, aren't you? You go to Bremerton to see our two sons at least once a year. There, now he'll know how to do that.
Well, now, Verlin, let's have a word about this.
Well, this is the spot I was baptized in.
Well, how interesting.
We
In this spring era.
yes.
How
We
about
lived
that?
up in lived up in our house in Blue Creek, north of here. And on the way to church one morning, My mother put some extra clothes in, and when we got here, we got out of the buggy, and my father took me down in there and baptized me on the way to church, and I was confirmed that.
Well, when you were 8 years old, huh?
Yes, and this is the place it happened.
How interesting.
So I'm glad to come back to
Yeah, that's-
the spot of my entry into the church.
Well, that's interesting, is right.
Yeah, and that water is comfortable. It is not really cold.
Yeah. It stays that temperature even the winter, huh?
Yes, it maintains a constant temperature the year round, they say, and it's really quite comfortable to bathe in.
Wow. That's what your name is and a little bit about...
I'm Henry Simpson. I'm married to Afton's daughter.
Oh,
Maren.
so you're like I am. You're one of the outlaw
I'm an
in-laws.
outlaw, right. Married into the family.
Where do you live now?
I live in the lake.
Oh, in Layton. Okay, well, that's fine. Appreciate you driving us out here and
It's a privilege.
giving us the word on some of these things. We straighten out a few things we've sort of had in myth, sort of, up to this point.
Oh, it's a privilege to drive for you.
Thank you very much. Up to
Preston Anderson.
Preston Anderson. You're Uncle Will's son?
I'm Uncle Will's son.
Oh, how nice to...
13 in the family, and I'm the 7th one.
And you're Tressa and Verlin and Zelda's father's cousin, huh?
Right,
I see.
right.
Uh-huh. Well, we met Uncle Will, your father, many, many years ago.
On a fishing stream.
He told me some of the fishing stories that I can't exceed.
This was the water that gave those fishing
Oh.
stories.
He was fishing down there.
He used to take a lot up to the temple, you know. He'd catch
Yeah.
a big box that big,
Well,
fish that long, and take them into the temple. And
mhm.
he used to take them down to Children's Hospital once in a while. And he loved to do that.
He
Well,
was
we-
so angry when they took his driver's license away
Oh.
from him when he was 96.
Broke his heart.
Yeah.
86.
Oh, 86.
86.
Oh, okay.
But
We
he-
appreciate your acting as our tour guide today.
Thank you.
You
It's
bet.
been a
And thank
pleasure.
you very much. Now, this is the Blue Creek down from the spring where we just stopped. This is the sole support of water for this whole valley, I guess. Maybe a few wells here and there now, but it's been here for a long time. If it wasn't for this Blue Creek spring and the water that comes from it, why
Blue cranes.
there wouldn't be much production in this whole valley.
Now they're blue cranes. And took the wings and
Now look, yeah.
Really decked yourself out.
See 'em up the top of the
The
ridge.
horizon.
There they are.
They're walking and you can see the fields beyond. But
got
there's
long
more crazy.
yeah, they should
And-
pick them up a little bit there.
Whoops.
There you go.
Close now?
We're okay.
From Blue Creek.
Can't see it now.
Well, we're going to
Catch
go up on top.
water
Okay.
during the
Yeah,
winter,
we'll
and
look
whenever
on
they
top.
don't need it for
Now
irrigation,
this
they
is our south
catch
line.
it in this reservoir and put it up in this reservoir, and then
No,
they add
that's
that
all
to their
Thailand.
summer irrigation water. And get this on the go or not.
The only time they grew
This is
was
we're
on
under
a
the
dry
dam
year
now.
when the wheat wasn't very good.
This is the embankment. It's not a real high dam, but
And they were
it holds back
so
quite a bit of water on the other side.
It's real sticky.
Part of the embankment and the hill over on the other side.
Now that building right, or those trees right over there, now,
Embankment, so we see pretty good sized reservoir.
that's where the two canals divide.
This is the gate,
Right there.
and the water back of it, and it's about probably 50 feet down to the water.
Yeah.
Lot
Good
more
sized
coming out
reservoir
now
here.
than going in.
Yes.
This is the division where the two canals divide. One
This
Right
is-
over there.
This is looking down stream from the top of the dam. Bunch of nice cows down there in the field. A few other things.
I thought it was nearly all gone.
And here's the town of Howell down below.
This is all real heavy
This
soil
is
over
looking
here.
down on the face
Up
of the
against the
dam.
mountains, you get kind of a
From
gravelly
the top
soil.
of the dam.
But I think probably where
On the road over
where
the
your
top of the
father
dam,
was,
this is looking down.
pretty heavy clay. Like one company owns this whole valley, all the Blue Creek Valley.
Part of the oldest ranch in the valley. Far end, he said. Some of the original buildings still out there.
Now, Gladman Sorensen, you remember her? Gladman? Elmer Sorensen, you don't remember them?
I remember the name, was all.
Sorensen, but I don't remember.
Well, this was a different family. She just died last week. She was 94.
The old blacksmith shop, they say. Still standing from ancient days. How old would that be?
Oh,
75 years?
The first one right here.
well, it was here, I know, in 1909. So it's probably been there for
90 years. House, nice new home there, so that hasn't been there for 90 years. But some of these buildings have been here for a long time.
nice looking horses anyway.
Boy, they're nice and fat.
I don't believe they are, but they were into the boys. Alvin Jordan was the
Send
father.
Kenny for
Yeah,
Sandy.
he had a boy that was a little younger than I was. I don't remember his name.
Now there was Clovis.
Verlin, tell us a little bit about this store now here, somebody.
Well, of course, this was a central point of interest for kids as we came to school. If we could rake up any pennies or anything like that, we'd come down here and blow the whole thing in one place.
Big spenders, huh?
It was either an all-day sucker or a jawbreaker.
But I think it was a general merchandise store. I remember it sold clothing besides candy. And probably some groceries, flour.
Okay, this is the new chapel.
New chapel
How?
and new school.
That is a
Something
nice
different than
chapel.
they have had before, I guess.
Brick job.
Than a schoolhouse.
We got married in.
You can go on over there. We'll walk back.
Okay.
I want to get a picture of the old school.
Well, I think a lot of them are coming over here now to go through there. Lois
We'll
has the
stop
key.
here then. And
They'll be
Okay.
fine, and maybe we can just
Oh,
bid
she
a-
came. She beat
Yeah,
us
that's
here.
her.
Get a drink of cold water, huh?
Now they built this after the war. You know, we went.
There. There you go.
I'll add to how, but it'll be something new at least. Did you get our jug over there?
No, we've got to go get it. This is a brand new chapel. They enlarged the church.
But there are so many lights, you know.
What's the seating capacity?
I'm pretty close to 200.
How many do you have more now?
I think it's 200 or more.
We always run, our number now left it was 167.
And they just keep having to come in and out, and which we really needed. And they told us we were the only.
This is the old school where we, just inside the door, Max. I can remember standing on those steps and watching a rodeo that many years ago. We surely had a nice time here with the Will Anderson family today. They're having a wheelbarrow race. Isn't that neat? Oh, I bet she's laughing so hard she can't get up. She got tipped out of the wheelbarrow.
Wheelbarrow ride, huh?
This, Verlin and Zelda both went to school here. This building was erected the year Zelda was born. And Zelda went here until she was in the 5th grade. And Verlin probably went here till he was in the 3rd grade. Isn't that neat?
1911, when that was built.
1918 when I started the school. This is file call. Guess that's how you say it.
cattle and
And that's where they build the satellites and the
Yes.
motor farm or
horses
something.
had that eat the grain and
The rings for the,
in the golden
Here anyway.
Well, I guess they have a lot of high-powered explosives. I suppose that had something to do with it. I don't know.
Nobody else wanted it.
Since they didn't put it here because of any environmental advantage,
Yeah.
only isolation is probably the...
I guess this
Corinne,
is
we
time.
don't want to go to Corinne, do we? See, they really
Let's clear up
they
here.
expand that thing out so that, see, that's because of the high danger factor, so that if they blow up, they're not going to blow the whole thing up.
See the interesting thing over there.
Yeah. All over the mountains and everywhere. Look.
Yeah, they've got their buildings widely separated so that the tragedy in one of them doesn't affect the other.
That's right.
I read about that years ago.
Thiokol took a pretty good bit of rub on this this explosion on all
that
those
ship?
astronauts that were killed, you know.
Oh,
Their heads, anyway. That must-
Atlantis.
This is where they work before they build the explosives. The building.
Oh, I got some shuttles there. You getting them, huh?
mm-hmm. Not very,
Or English-speaking people there. It's become the international language.
Once they got roads all over the...
Fun.
what's
A
that
big
for?
flag.
maybe there's more buildings up behind the mountain.
Oh, there's a launch place up there.
Maybe so.
Guess I'll wait till we turn back the other way. Wear your earrings. Checks, everything.
She got right out in the front of the
Yeah, I know.
middle of the road. She looked like she could have stopped us, too.
Worked.
Okay, now we're at Clarence and Zelda's home. I'm putting this film on the same tape that we used when we went to Blue Creek here several weeks ago for the Anderson family reunion, and today is the birthday dinner at Zelda's house for Zelda's birthday, which will be tomorrow. We got a day early, but that's all right. The food is just as good and everything else is too, and so, but Verlin and Zelda and Tressa are here, and Ruth, 4 members of the family for the reunion, and we want to take up a few of the stories that we left off on the one who went on the trip to Blue Creek, and so if the people at the table over there will talk good and loud, and whatever they say will be recorded now. So just go right ahead and away you go.
He didn't tell you that Jane Martinson is here with us,
on there.
and she has written some things about Hans Andersen's birth in Mexico.
Jane, would you like? Take one you want to the paper and then Clarence, you want a piece of fish? Piece of squash?
Now, Jane, if you stick your head out there a little bit and say hello here,
Hi.
we'll include you as one of the group here, and whether you like it or not.
I like it.
Okay.
Jane mentioned about the a ranch, Corralitos. Is that
Little
right?
Corral.
And there was a big building on that ranch. And when the people moved to Mexico, they divided those big rooms with quilts so that each family or each member had a little privacy. It was here that our father, Hans Andersen, was born. That was 1886. He lived and went to what schooling he had at Colonia Diaz. Then he went to Logan to continue his education, and to support himself he worked for the Hanson Livestock Company. It was a church-owned company, and they produced the dairy products as well as the meat that was sent to Salt Lake for the general authorities' use. And he went to College Ward. It was made up of the people who worked for this Hanson Livestock Company. They went to a ward called College Ward, but that didn't have anything to do with a agricultural college at Logan. It was south of Logan near Wellsville. That right there?
Yes.
You know the location of those places more. And I found a record of their membership and my membership after we were driven out of Mexico in 1812. And we went back to
Too
Logan.
far back, 1912.
1912. That's right. Only 100 years through. I'm getting to feel extra old these days.
You know, maybe the reason they called it College Ward was because of the Hanson Livestock Company, which was connected with, or maybe it wasn't connected with the school, that it was connected with the church.
Anyway,
It was just an idea.
These men went, as part of their tuition, they went to the AC. They went to the college, and it was a college ward made up of them, but not located on a university grounds. Is that the way it goes? I think so. Now, where do we want to go from there?
Oh, we gotta get you born.
Well, I was born in the Budge Hospital in Logan. And
1911.
1911, the 24th of October.
Across the street from the Logan Temple.
There it says it was located.
When we were on that trip to Blue Creek, up there, Zelda and Clarence and Zelda, as all they did is rehearse, or Zelda and Berlin and Tressa, as all they did is rehearse things that took place in their youth when they were young. Zelda and Berlin both went to school in Howell, where we had the reunion, and I didn't have the camera out when they were telling all these stories. And so now I want them to rehearse some of those things. Vernon told a story about getting caught in the snow up there with his dad in the car, and Zelda told a story about going to that school and one thing and another. So let's rehearse a few of those and get them on film so you can see them forever and your posterity can see them.
So you take a turn now and tell about the snow.
Well, we were traveling in a Model T Ford from Tremont and back to Blue Creek.
Talk up pretty good, brother.
And it was getting dark. A snowstorm came up as we passed by a place called Blind Springs. And the snow was piling up on the road and drifting until my father couldn't determine really where the roadway was. And then the Ford stopped going. The snow got so deep it wouldn't go any further. So we had passed by a house just a few hundred yards back, and there at Blind Springs, and so Father let the water out of the radiator, and he and Mother grabbed the kids, and we went back to that house where we stayed all night. And it was extremely fortunate that the car died right near a house, because it was about the only house between Tremont and Howell.
20 miles.
Something like that. So the Lord really blessed us that time.
All of us.
Go ahead.
I'm really glad to get that story on the tape, Verlin. That'll go along with what you talked about and what we did when we were up there on that reunion. Now, Zelda, what have you got to say? You told us you went to school in that little house up there, that little schoolhouse where we had the party.
It was 8 miles from where we lived, up on the ranch down to Howell School. And the fellows drove a van, a covered wagon, kind of like a buggy, but not as heavy as a wagon. But not fancy as a Surrey either.
Pulled with horses, right?
Uh-huh. Pulled with horses. And we'd walk a mile down to the main road, and they would pick us up in the van and take us down to school. Because it was so cold and miserable during the winters, and because some of those winters we spent in Idaho and other places where it was warmer, Mother had me wait until I was nearly 8 years of age to go to school. She taught me to read by reading the Old Testament stories, so that I could read the Old Testament stories by Homer before I ever went to school. That's why when I sat in the first row of benches that first day of school and read what the teacher had written on the board as assignments for the 4th grade, she put me in the 2nd row. That promoted me from the 1st grade to the 2nd grade in
The first day?
30 minutes.
You were smarter than you looked.
You probably moved up another grade.
I tell you that I have to credit my mother for teaching me to read, and I've wished ever since then I had known just how she did it. It would have saved me a lot of school teaching problems if I'd have known. Well, how did she teach you to read?
Well, I'm not sure my memory's correct, but as I recall, she taught me to read out of the Book of Mormon. And
You're not the Old Testament, but me.
I remember stumbling over some of those long words and trying to sound them out. But I didn't start school until I think I was about in the 3rd grade. So Mother gave me my education at home, and mainly out of Scripture, particularly out of the Book of Mormon. So she taught me to read it.
Was Janice your first teacher?
Yes, she was.
She was mine. She was our cousin. She was Janice Anderson when she was teaching school. Dad's cousin.
Yes, our second.
With all due respect to your mother's teaching ability, she had something to work with.
Well, we won't go into that.
That always helps, doesn't it? Having taught you know.
She was also a school teacher before she was married.
But up on the ranch was this big windmill that turned with the wind and provided the water not only for the cattle stock, for our own culinary purposes, but it provided water for the garden and other grew. I don't remember particularly the vegetables and things that she grew, but I'll never forget the California poppy. She planted everywhere among her vegetables for a bit of color. This is like her mother, who did more with flowers and plants because she loved them so. I remember she grew a hop vine on the porch after the house was built. And she used those hops to make some beer, hot beer for Dad, because the doctor said that that was good for the kidney trouble he was having. They would hang the finished product in an olla and outside where it was keep cool. I think they put a gunny sack soaked in water over that olla to help with the evaporation to keep it cool. We like to have a little taste of Dad's beer. We liked it so well, in fact, that he became concerned about it. And one day when there was none, and I asked Mother about it, she said, "We're not going to make any more beer. Dad says he doesn't want any of his children to be tempted in any way about the word of wisdom, even though this particular beer was good for him, that we wouldn't have any more beer."
Say something about Jane as my teacher. You've got to take some responsibility for what I think.
Well, I'll be grateful to take responsibility for how you turned out. I don't know, but it's true. I don't think so.
He always reminds people that you were his teacher and one of his best.
You know, she
You
had
taught all of us, didn't you, Jane? Did you teach Stella? Was I the last
I had
one?
Miss Baker.
And then you got married. Then I got married. Oh, yeah.
I know Jane had 2 classes there in the same room. And I would sit and listen to her teach the other class. As I did in Utah.
Get it going and coming.
Well, I think that's why the children did so well in these even one-room schools. They learned it once or twice or 3 times.
We learned it when we wanted to and when we were ready for it. This is the lockstep.
Well, and then you weren't just caged in to a certain level of learning. If you were listening to the upper grades learn, why, you were getting more than maybe the school people thought you ought to have, but you were learning nonetheless.
You wanted to.
Well, now, Shirley, I know you weren't born up in Blue Creek, but you've associated somebody that was, and you might have something you want to put on this tape that's just as important as those big things up in Blue Creek. So.
Well, I really enjoyed that trip up to Blue Creek because I've heard these names and these places, and so it was really exciting for me to go up and see there really was such a place and to get acquainted with some of the people that were there. And it was fun to be there at that Anderson reunion and see how they enjoyed each other and that family, and the constant reminder of how important it is for us to stay close as families, even though the generation and the age spreads. It's still important to have that. And I can't ever be sorry that Roland was educated in Blue Creek and that his mom taught him to read. I've heard him tell this story many times, and how he feels like she planted in him the seeds of a love for the Book of Mormon when he was just a little boy. We're just glad to be here to help celebrate her 80th year. We're not so far behind. We'll be celebrating ours pretty soon.
Thank you, Shirley. Now, Mom, Tress, is all I've heard is Blue Creek for 45 years.
You don't have to hear it today. I'll get this out and tell my story when you're not around.
The surprise of my life was when we went up there and there was a creek, actually water in the creek. The nearest I've ever was ever involved with Blue Creek was driving on the highway toward Snowmobile. We'd go to Idaho and up to the northwest. And when we went on that trip up there and we saw Blue Creek and the spring and heard the history of it and so forth, why, I, like Shirley, was really interested and delighted with actual story and an understanding of what all took place and the layout of it and all that. And I thought that was a delightful trip also.
With those hot springs, wasn't that interesting?
Yeah, that was nice. The whole thing was just,
really
just delightful.
See,
Now,
just came
the
out
camera's
of the ground,
still on Tress, and she hadn't said a word.
I want to eat my dinner so I can get the
Oh, I see. Okay,
cake
well,
in a minute.
we'll crank it up.
This Blue Creek spring that wells up out of the ground there in that very arid desert country is sort of a miracle. And were it not for that spring, there would never have been a Howell, the town of Howell, or Blue Creek either. The people would not have settled there without that water, which permitted them to raise crops down below it. That is, they raised alfalfa to feed their horses. And of course, the horses they used to work the dry farms with. And so it's always been sort of a miracle to me to see that water well up out of the ground there and provide sufficient water to permit towns of modest size to even exist.
Did it run summer and winter?
Constantly, and the flow never changed. Neither did the temperature. I was baptized in that little Blue Creek bowl there, where the water welled up out of the ground.
There's that much water then.
It's deep.
Well, it's just as amazing as that it was there then, that it's still there.
Yes.
It's still running probably the same flow it did then, and where the water comes from is amazing. There's no mountains there to store the water, and it just comes up an artesian type thing out of the ground, and it was phenomenal, actually.
Did we taste it? Was it good?
Oh, it was good water. Yeah, it was all right to drink. It wasn't what you'd really go for all the time.
They could get 320 acres. He got not very much money, what we would consider very much money now. But that spring, I can remember in the winter time, would have steam coming up from it all the time. It was so cold all the way around it, but it was there. It was always warm. There's one other thing that I would like for Berlin to tell. I can start it because Mother and Dad went to Logan and left me in charge of Berlin and Darl, and I don't know, Tressa maybe. Anyway, late in the afternoon, here came Berlin and Darl running as hard as they could. Some big black thing had started a fire in the shed where the equipment was located, and right in the spot where the car had been. I ran as fast as I could with a bucket of water to see what I could do, and we were able to put that out. But I'd like Verlin to tell his side of this story.
Tell about that big black thing, Bill.
Well, I have to confess I don't remember now about any big black thing. I may have remembered once, but I've forgotten. But I recall that
Well, there was a big black circle where the fire had been, that's for sure. And with a little ring of fire all around the big black spot. Now,
well, this was a shed in which the farm machinery was stored, and Dad had put straw on the ground under the shed. And of course that was to make it a little cleaner to move around on and so forth. And when the fire started, I recall I started rushing to the house for...
What was it, spontaneous combustion?
Yeah, it must have been, because nobody had ever admitted to starting it. Playing with matches was
Not today's the day,
absolutely
dear.
forbidden on that place. And so I started for the house. I must have had a guilty feeling about the whole thing, though, because I remember kneeling down on the cement foundation of the granary and praying for help to get that fire out. And my bucket didn't do any good. The Lord put the fire out, and the machinery was not burned.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting story. When you get started on recalling these things, one sort of thing sort of leads to another. Well, now, Clarence, what about you? You didn't think you was going to get off scot-free here, did you?
Well, I've been to Blue Creek a couple or three times. People from Blue Creek came over to our home when we were in Paris, Idaho, so we got acquainted with them. And I was always thrilled and elated when I heard the story of the settlement of Blue Creek, because that sounded similar to the old pioneer history and lives of our early parents on both sides. And in this instance, found out that Zelda's grandfather on her father's side and my grandfather on my mother's side came over from Denmark on the same ship. And they had close friendship all their lives.
and to Utah, in the same company. But our parents had never met each other until we introduced them in Salt Lake after our mission.
Well, that's an interesting story, Clarence. Well, Jane, now look over here. Let's hear what you can add to this. I don't suppose you've ever been to Blue Creek,
I've not been to Ruth,
but you know people that have.
but I set
And you went to
fire-
Verdon one time, I heard.
I set fire to a barn once. I never did tell anybody about it until long, long afterwards. I was
When you were too old to spank?
I went down to this little barn affair, and
Where was this now?
this was on the ranch in New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
And there were some guns in the corner. I don't know why those guns were there. Our father was usually very particular about the guns being put up. These were 22s. And I didn't have much else to do, so I just decided I'd do a little target practicing right in the floor. So I did. And there was hay on the floor. And so I just shot all the bullets that were in the gun. Didn't know how to load it anymore, so I carefully put it away just like I found it and went on about my business. And pretty quick, smoke began to come out, and some of the family members noticed it, so they rushed down there, and there was a hose, and they put it out. We had had a man stay all night there. Well, he was just an overgrown kid, but he was smoking at the time. And so he took the blame, got me off the hook. They said that stupid Mike Rice had to have that cigarette in the barn and set this barn on fire. It could have burned the whole thing up. And I sat there quiet for one time in my life and didn't say a word. And years later, I confessed. And my mother, I can remember when she was displeased at me,
always called me Janie, and she said, "Why, Janie, I'm surprised at you doing such a thing and let somebody else take the blame."
Well, how did she know?
Well, I finally confessed it
Oh, I see.
after I grew up.
Okay.
But that's what she said to me after I was grown, how ashamed she was. And that was sort of punishment because I didn't like her to be displeased with her. I think my mother was a very good child and never did do things that were not supposed to be done. And she never could quite get accustomed to her children doing all these queer things that she was never had never done, and I think she just really was a very trusting soul.
Well, that, would you like me to tell you something that'll sort of salve your conscience a little bit?
Yes, do.
With all my experience of shooting at guns, I've handled guns all my life, and I doubt that you could start a fire with a .22 by shooting right at the muzzle or anywhere else. So I think it was that guy with the cigarette.
Oh my Christ.
See, sometime those cigarettes, they can throw them out and they'll sit there for a half hour and smolder away and a little breeze come along and pretty quick they're gone. So I don't think you set the barn on fire.
There. Now, I'm glad to get that off my conscience.
Well, that was a fun story anyway, Jane. Thank you very
Maybe it was
much.
just enough to make that fan it just a little bit as it went off.
Now, Ruthie, let me get you in focus here a little bit. Okay, now, did you ever go to Blue Creek, Ruth?
I never went to Blue Creek.
You weren't even born there, huh?
I wasn't even born there.
Well,
In fact, I wanted to ask Zelda if she was the only one of Mother's children who was born in a hospital. Were there any other children of Mother's born in a hospital?
And maybe I wasn't born in the hospital. Maybe it was just a doctor, Dr. Budge from the hospital, that came out to the house too. That could be.
But the rest of us were born at home, right?
and where were you born, Ruthie?
I was born in grandmother's house in Thatcher, Arizona.
In Thatcher, huh?
From
Wow.
Nona was born there, and Ethlyn, and myself, and Don Lee. And then by the time Lanier came, my grandma had moved to Mesa, and he was born there.
And you spent your youth in Verdon, huh? How old are you? Were born? You were living in Verdon when you were born, huh?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And we moved from there in 1941.
How old are you then?
13, I think.
13, huh?
When the war broke out.
Just a young, fresh teenager, huh?
Just barely a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
And the war broke out that fall.
Yeah. That's when I first met your family, I guess.
When you came there to
Okay.
Williamsville.
This powder was very inflammable, and you better be careful with it. But I wanted to experiment and see if it would burn. So I tore the shotgun shell open, and I took a match and the shotgun shell out to the cattle trough, where the cattle drank. The windmill would pump the water into the trough. So I think with all that water there, I was pretty safe. So I lit the match and lit the powder. Well, I guess it's fortunate I still have eyes. But it just blew up in my face. Of course, I couldn't hide all that from Mother. She knew something had happened to my hair. And she finally got the story out of me, what I'd done. But it was kind of a miracle I survived that one.
Yeah.
That happened up in Blue Creek there,
Uh-huh.
on the farm.
Tell about the peanuts in your pocket too, please.
Well, you tell that one. I guess I don't remember it.
Don't you really?
No, I don't.
Then Mother told me that Berlin used to carry peanuts around in his pocket just to see how long he could keep himself from eating peanuts, which he dearly loved. Then do tell about the time when you thought you could trick Heavenly Father.
Well, my taught me to have faith in the Lord, and I remember she telling me one time that he knew everything that was going to happen before it happened, and that he knew everything I was going to do before I did it. And I remember walking down this road in the summertime, a hot, dusty road, barefooted, and I was thinking that over. And I thought, well, I'm going to fool Heavenly Father. He thinks I'm going to step there. And so I stepped over here, thinking I'd fooled him. It took me quite a while after that to figure out he knew I was going to fool him too, or try to fool him. But I relate that story and remember it because it indicates the nature of my mother's teachings. And she just had implicit faith in the Lord. And she taught it to us in our mere infancy.
Hey, Zelda.
I can remember whenever I didn't want to do something my mother had told me to do, she had enough faith in what she was teaching me and asked me to do. She would say to me, well, you don't have to. You don't have to do what I tell you to. But I've been told by Heavenly Father to teach you what He commands that you do. And if you don't like His commandments, you're going to have to deal with Him. You go complain to Him about it, not me.
And so you did.
I didn't dare argue with Him.
Nor her either after that, huh?
I tried real hard to do it.
Okay, very good.
I want to tell about the things I remember of Blue Creek, Utah, the place where I was born and lived until I was 4 years old. My first recollections of my mother was one time when she stood me in the doorway and wrapped a big black shawl around me